Shwmai a croeso cynnes, and welcome to the What's Your Story podcast. I'm James Owen, a Welsh filmmaker and storyteller, and I'm passionate about sharing stories. This podcast is all about business owners sharing their journey, and we'll be speaking with directors, entrepreneurs and creatives from all across Wales to learn from their experiences. We believe everyone has a story to tell. What's your story? Shwmai and welcome to the next episode of What's Your Story. And as a storyteller and a filmmaker, I love to hear creative stories, and we've got a really creative one for you here today with someone who is a musician, mad for music. In fact, he was raised by some punk rockers, and he's a teacher, and he's passionate about entrepreneurship and also an introverted extrovert, which I didn't think could be a thing. Robyn, thank you for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate you coming on.
Shwmai, thanks. It's amazing to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. No, thanks for reaching out. And for those who are listening and watching, can you maybe give us a flavour of what your sort of day-to-day responsibilities are as both a lecturer and maybe some of the other hats you wear?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, I'm working with the University of Wales, Trinity, St David, particularly in Swansea Business School. And I'm a program manager and lecturer, so I look after a lot of the undergraduate business management degrees. Doing some really exciting stuff, and in terms of the other hats that I'm wearing, a lot of those are through the role that I've currently got. Some fantastic students, making some fantastic collaborations as well, and that's one of the reasons I reached out to yourself, because I feel like you're kind of telling the story of so many people. And I kind of wanted to make sure that we were in cahoots so that, you know, I could have maybe students speak to you about some of the amazing things you've got going on. But yeah, it's a really exciting time to be doing what I'm doing, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. No, I've gotten to hear some of the stuff that you're responsible for. It's really exciting to hear some of the projects and what's to come of some of your students. So yeah, long may that collaboration continue. It's only just started. But Robyn, growing up, maybe give me a bit of a background and a history. What was life like for you growing up?
Wild. It was, wild. Two, you said it yourself, punk rockers. Something my father always likes to tell us is when we first moved in to where we were living, just before I was born actually, a lot of the locals were sort of waiting around outside the house, just waiting to see when mum and dad were going to come, because they saw my parents, but thought, surely they've got to be the kids. Because, my father, he had like an afro, wearing a snakeskin belt with leather trousers and a vest. And my mum, who had like a 2-foot tall Mohican. But yeah, they were my parents, punk rockers, hippies when they wanted to be, but just lovely people who were creative through and through. And growing up, there was plenty of love, but no real direction in terms of, well, you need to do this, or you need to follow that path. The path we needed to follow, as far as they were concerned, is just one that resulted in us being happy. So that then led to, the kingdom of wild, because it was the Wild West.
Growing up, your parents were touring musicians. What was that like as a child, going to like Holland, gigging?
Well, yeah, we did end up in Holland, and it was amazing because you'd see so many different people and you'd get to hear so many different stories. And, people, whether they're taking pity on you because you're a child not in bed, or whether they just think, well, this is cool. It was just wonderful. That was my world, and that's all I knew, really. And it wasn't that I had anything else to compare it to. It was just, wow, look at all these fantastic people giving me sweets and money, because they tend to. It was just really exciting, and to see all the people that my parents made smile in one way or the other. It was, at that time, it was nothing but magic for a kid. Yeah,
great. And getting that sort of love for music early on as a child, did you ever sort of have an ambition as a teenager to want to be a professional musician and tour yourself? Was that ever a desire for you?
Yeah, it didn't happen as early as I think my parents thought it might. There were always instruments around the house. There's no dinner table, but there's a drum kit set up in the dining room, and when we had a dining room, and guitars strewn everywhere, basses. So, you'd pick it up even when you're thinking about something, and before you know it, you've got an instrument in your hands. But I never thought that's what I would be doing until I suppose my early teen years where I kind of discovered I had a natural affinity for it. And then I remember from like the age of 12, 13, my father was like, right, okay, so get proficient enough on that, then get your leather trousers and your pointy boots and we'll get you to New York. That was the only sort of life plan he had for me. We know people in the business, some of whom were living in the States, and he was like, yeah, so I'll schlep you off over there and you'll make a good go of it. And for a long time I thought, well, yeah, maybe that is it, until I met my friends that I've got now, and they were like my extended family. So I ended up just playing in local bands and sort of repeating history in that way.
Yeah, great. And I think that in the creative industry, in some sectors, it is quite tough to make money, right? Especially being a musician. And I think with the age of digital music, makes it a lot harder for musicians to earn money from their craft. So I think, unfortunately, some people in that space sort of have to just maybe do it for the love of it, the fun of it. Because, for you, there wasn't really a progression of a career as a young person, because, in fact, you wanted to go into study nursing, didn't you?
Yeah, so that was, so I was in the tail end of sort of the analog recording era. Digital was coming along. People were cracking out demos in their houses. But the real difficulty for us musically was that by the time that I was doing the pub circuits and the club circuits, almost every venue wanted covers. So the age of originality had been taken out of music, at least in the small town scenario. So, a little bit lost. And then a few things happened, which ultimately resulted in me, going into study nursing, or looking to study nursing at the very least,
Yeah. Was that with your mother?
Yeah, so my mum, as well as being a cool punk rocker, sort of, burnt too bright, died too young sort of a thing, she had a lifelong addiction to substance, predominantly alcohol. And she finally succumbed to her addiction in 2011. And I was a little bit lost at that time anyway. And it was sort of a long time coming. It was one of those bittersweet things that I was so happy she was now at peace, not suffering. But I was left not knowing what to do. But a couple of years prior, I'd met my girlfriend, now my wife, mother of my children. And she was like, right, you've got to do something now. I've had enough. Stop moping around. The bass is in the corner, the guitar, you're going to do anything. But I just didn't feel creative at that point. So she kind of urged me. I think she actually picked me up a prospectus. She from Swansea University at that time. She was like, right, flick through there, choose something, you're going to uni. And I was like, oh, okay. And the only thing I could think at that time was how much admiration I had for the doctors and nurses that provided the palliative care to my mum at the end of her days, really. And I thought, well, I like people. That's one thing I knew. I love people. And so maybe that's what I'll do. But obviously during my GCSEs, I was busy being a musician, so I didn't have any qualifications. So I then went to do an Access to Health and Social Care diploma with a view to then go on to study medicine at university. And I did the diploma and I got very good grades. But it didn't necessarily pan out that way. And I believe the stars aligned because everything happens for a reason. But I didn't become a nurse.
Well, you had a Swansea prospectus, but Swansea didn't offer you a place.
Yeah, how dare they?
The cheek,
I know. And I was, everywhere else did. Cardiff were like, come on, come back. We loved you during interview. There was one random, I think it was Leeds, Pontypridd, I didn't apply for because that's where my wife was going, or my girlfriend at the time. But I got into a couple of places, but Swansea, I didn't get in. And I just thought, well, okay, well, clearly it's a sign, very spiritual in my ways as I am. And so I decided to stick it out in the job I got whilst I was working. Well, I was kind of working part-time, to fund life, as it were, while studying. And so I just carried on there, took on a supervisor role. And then over the next decade, I just stayed there and I slowly worked my way through the ranks. And I really learned to love business at that time because I saw that if you've got good business acumen, how much you can help people. And if you're able to show people how to, progress themselves, how rewarding that could be for me. But then I suppose that brought with it some other questions, because when you're a manager, a leader, a boss, call it what you will, and you're encouraging people to leave your company to go on and do the things that they always aspired to do, or the things that they never really felt that they could, I was effectively getting some of my best staff and encouraging them to go and pursue that thing you wanted to do. And it's not the best business model. So I thought, well, maybe what can I do, which is, to promote people in their endeavors and have it looked upon positively. And then that's where the teaching came into it.
So that, on that note then, encouraging people to leave, why do you think that's a bad business model?
Well, certainly for the company with which I was in, obviously attrition costs. I teach whole lectures and modules now on the fact that the training costs, they're so, it's a lot of money. It's an overhead which costs a lot for a lot of organizations. And so every time you lose a member of staff, the amount you then have to spend on getting someone up to the level that they were. So when you've got good staff, ultimately you incentivize to keep them there and you promote whatever it is that they want. You give them good work-life balance. So for me to actively then encourage them to, when I employed you, you said it was because it's all you got going, but really you've shown quite an aptitude for this. Why don't you go and do that thing that you mentioned in the interview? So great for them. And I felt lovely for doing it. But, if you look at the amount then I had to train new people, I just thought, it's probably, I'd be best served somewhere where that's actually my job.
I think that says something about you as a person, because I think ultimately when it comes down to leadership skills, you're trying to get that person to be the best version of them. And if they're happier in maybe a vocation they've studied or something like that, then they're going to be better people. They're going to perform at their best. So yeah. I think there's something in that. Obviously, the flip side is, okay, not great for your directors or the directors of the company, yes, the shareholders and all you, because yes, your recruitment costs are going up. And I've worked with several companies on recruitment films because they're losing people and high turnover of staff, and that is a serious problem in a larger organisation. But I think for smaller businesses, I think it's a good thing. There's a guy, Paul Griffiths, who was a pastor of a church in Carmarthen. Right. He was on the podcast a couple of months ago, and XL Bowl is a bowling alley. So the church in Carmarthen run a bowling alley, right, which is an amazing story fantastic in itself. But that's something they encourage. They almost see it as a bit of a stopgap because for Carmarthen, they have a lot of students go and study there. They actually enjoy seeing people leave the organisation because, they can't afford to pay them a really high wage. Yeah. It's sort of typical of most organisations, living wage. And they quite enjoy seeing people leave. But like you said there is an issue when you may be trying to get people to perform at their best or be at their happiest. You might lose somebody and then you got to train somebody else. But I think it's a good leadership principle there. And that shows to me that you care for that person because ultimately you want the best for them. And, we've had it where, it just hasn't worked out for some of our team. We wish them the best because we do want the best for them. We're the best for our company as well, but obviously we want the best for the person. But yeah, it's just an interesting dialogue there on people being at their best, performing, and obviously encouraging them to leave. I just find that quite fascinating because it says a lot about caring, and I think that's what a lot of organisations lack these days is managers caring about their people.
Yeah, it's tough, and you hit the nail on the head in terms of the pressures coming from directors and managing directors. But it's funny because they would never necessarily have that touch point with their staff. And I found that either you encourage them to leave whilst they're flying high, and then they would then ultimately get a much higher chance of being successful in what they would rather be doing, or they would stay with you because no one was leaving the organization that I was, people liked working with me and that was lovely. And I really appreciated that. And they were like, why do you want me to go? I'm like, no, it's not that I want you to go, but I want you're doing really well now. And I want you to take that energy and apply it to something you love. Because otherwise what I did find is for those that could have gone on, but decided to stay, where there wasn't perhaps opportunity for progression or where there was no more money coming in terms of promotions, their abilities and their passion and their drive, it goes down. And with each stage of it going down further and further, they'd be less likely to. And it's at that time they think, oh, maybe I will go and get that job. But they're so defeated almost that it's a lot less likely. So it's trying to capitalize on them being at their highest point. Yeah. But it's quite a dichotomy because that's when you should keep them. And that's where the challenge was, I think. And it was one that I internalized a great deal and ultimately thought, well, I need to go somewhere where this is something that I can do for a living, really.
So you were hungry for just helping people. Like your parents were somebody who instilled in you a love for others. You wanted to help people. So what was the sort of next step for you as an individual in your sort of walk, in your career? You went from managing lots of people to then what was next for you, Robyn?
So it was tail end of COVID. I had managed to facilitate my role such that I had less day-to-day interaction with my staff because I now had people to train people for me. And so I was kind of looking at metrics and screens, assessing productivity, looking at financial budgets and pitching forecasts and things. And I did kind of feel, well, it's now more than I think I should go elsewhere. I really feel like I need to for myself. And I'll never forget, because my wife was very heavily pregnant with our second child. And I thought, you know what?
Good time to leave a job.
Yeah, career change. Let's do it. Not just a job, but a career, a vocation. But I'll always be eternally grateful. The company I was working with, they saw something in me. And despite any qualifications, they persistently gave me promotions. And it was as I sort of hit the top tier, the ceiling of what I could be doing with them, they were like, right, it's probably time you get a bit of a rubber stamp here. And so they were looking at sort of BTEC or MVQ level business qualifications as a way to say, look, the research center manager, as I was at the time, he is accredited in some form. But I was like, no, shoot for the stars. And I had a chance encounter with someone that was the assistant dean at UWTSD. And I managed to put in an application to go straight into an MBA due to my age and my experience in management by that point. And it was a bit like Dragon's Den. I was terrified. I sat in front of these people with a light like this one. So what makes you think you could just walk into a master's degree, mate? And I was like, But I did the interview and I was successful and I got onto the MBA. And whilst the diploma I did for nursing was my first ever experience of real academia, because I was a terrible student at school, I just was. I would never want to teach me. I really enjoyed my experience during my diploma, but when I went to do my master's, wow, it was an eye-opener for many reasons. I loved the flow of conversation I was able to have with the lecturers. I remember my first lecture with Maggie Inman. She was teaching me critical leadership, and I just thought, this is where I want to be. I was blown away by it. And because I did it part-time, because I was helping, run the department I was in, I just fell in love with academia in a big way and seeing what it was doing for me, who is this creative person. But I'm like, wait a minute, you can take these principles that we believe in and, like the love of people. It's one thing to tell someone, look, I think I know what would be good for you. But then if you can apply Belbin's team roles or, the Honey Mumford or the Blake and Mouton managerial grid, it actually gives you a foundation for which to help people. So I fell in love with
I'm guessing these are business principles you learned.
They're like leadership management models. And you mentioned the personality test earlier that you've done. And that was one of them.
I did a personality test in COVID and I came out as 100% extroverted. I'm quite proud of that.
Practically vibrated.
It was Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, the Myers-Briggs test. Yeah, another one. And these were fantastic tools that were giving me more of an understanding in some of the things that I felt were purely theoretical. There's actual principles you can implement. And so I fell in love with education during this time.
You got hooked?
I got hooked. But the interesting thing was, because I was doing part-time, say on a Saturday, for example, I was doing business. I was writing reports. I was doing financial projections in a real-life scenario. And I was sat next to this kid who'd come straight from his undergrad. And so he knew about Harvard referencing, for example. I didn't have a Scooby-Doo. But together, between us, we kind of covered both angles.
Yeah.
And but I remember when I had my first mark back for my first assignment, strategic marketing, and it was bad. I passed by the skin of my teeth. And to be honest, I've looked at my assignment, and I don't know if I should have. I'm a bit, maybe I'm more of a harsh marker now that I'm a lecturer myself, but it was amazing because I had a conversation with the person who at the time was actually the program manager of the whole masters. And she said, look, you clearly understand business, but I'm not sure that you understand the principles of academia and how you apply. So again, challenge. So I thought, well, how do I do it? So then I did something over the course of, say, 6 months, which would now take ChatGPT 2.6 seconds to calculate. I reverse engineered loads of PDF assignments that I found online. I looked at other examples of master's work and dissertations, and I realized the things that they're looking for in academia, which I wasn't doing. And I came up with a formula, and I've worked on that formula ever since. And actually, I'm currently writing my PhD about this thing that I've developed in line with another fantastic academic that I've worked with since, Donna Morgan. She's wonderful. And it's about teaching anybody how to write proficiently, be it in terms of business or academic. It's so it's a fun little thing, and that all came from my feeling, oh my god, I'm not perfect actually, because this but the rest of my grades were fine, and I got a distinction in my dissertation, so that's what I wanted. But yeah, that really lit the touch paper for me. And then so when I was looking at what am I going to do moving on from that company, there's only one thing in my mind, and there was only one place I was going to do it, and that was UWTSD.
Yeah, I'm sure anyone from the university listening now are going to nab you up for a case study later.
If they haven't already.
Yeah, fantastic. So you graduated with a master's in business administration?
Yeah, MBA, yeah.
Fantastic. And great to see that, you've had that sort of hunger for learning and education, and then you've sort of got really involved in that and just thrown yourself in fully. And it's probably to do that, in your sort of stage of life, it's probably bold, because if we want to take risks, it's always good when you don't have a mortgage, when you don't have kids, right? Because you've got nothing to lose. So it's big step for you to do that, and fantastic. And as a UWTSD grad, it's great to connect with fellow alumni. So after doing that, and I think earlier you mentioned about writing, right? I think it's important. I tell a lot of people these days, especially those that work within Stori Cymru, ChatGPT, great tool, right? But you cannot beat authentic writing. And I think people need to really pay attention to that, because even if it's responding to an email or a simple task, and you're relying on that tool, for me, it's just lazy. Yeah. It is just pure lazy, because if you were to compare, and I know they're getting better all the time, right? They're updating and upgrading the models, aren't they? But you just can't beat authentically written content, whether that's writing a story, a script, whether that's writing lyrics for a song.
Absolutely.
There's so many tools out there that can just make a song, right?
I did one the other night. It was brilliant. It was.
But it's good. It's good for inspiration, isn't it? But
It's good for a laugh.
Whether that's in academia or whether that's writing a business plan, I think it's good to get inspired by those things, but not for us to forget as creatives.
Well, that's it.
Whether you're a writer or not,
Yeah.
We should still write.
Yeah, it's use it or lose it, sister. Because if you rely too heavily on the machine, whilst a fantastic tool it is, you will lose that capability. And it's like, so at home, I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they utilize the term Google, as everyone does now. It's a tool. So, Dad, will you Google what happens in Minecraft if you make a nether portal? I don't know. But if they forget something for a moment, or even with friends, if you're out and about, I was in a gig the other day, or if you're at a pub and someone's like, what was the name of that guy? Get your phone out. And if people are around me, they know now the rule is no, give yourself at least 10 minutes to try and remember, at least. Because in the past, that's what we used to do. Or, you'd ring up a mate who can remember, but at least someone's brain is being used. It just breaks my heart. And I'm guilty of it a lot of the time. I'm like, what was that? What film was that guy in? And I'm straight away, I'm the one that you're watching a film, and all of a sudden, I've just got IMDb, and I'm like, I'm terrible for it myself. But yeah, authenticity is where it is, and
there's a bit of fun in that. Do you know when you try to remember, like, who directed that film? Or who was, like, just trying to think of it.
I love it.
And my wife, she'll be straight on the phone. I'm like, don't tell me.
Yeah,
I want the satisfaction of remembering.
And then you're like, all right, give me a letter.
Yeah, give me a clue.
Give me a clue.
First letter.
That's exactly it. And it takes a lot of processing power, but that process does something to your brain. It allows you to grow as a person, quite literally. And it's tiring work. And that's
your dissertation, prolific writing, was it?
Yeah, it was about, and again, double bubble, because that's the way I am. I like to try and make things, everything I do has got to have some form of contextual relevance, which is exactly how I'm running the program at the moment. I try and ensure that everything a student does has some form of relevance. Now, if you want to do a case study on Amazon, then yeah, great, if you feel it'll help you grow as a student. But if ultimately your brother owns a food truck or your sister owns a printing company, why not write about them? You could provide them with a business report or a marketing promotional strategy for free, and we could market to show you how good it is. So for my dissertation, I basically wrote a piece on what motivates employees in SMEs in Swansea, basically just to find out how to make my staff happy or more happy. So it was great. And so I was very, very invested in it. And I think that's why it did so well.
And with that sort of paper you wrote then, how could maybe businesses in the region apply some of those principles that you looked into? What can maybe some businesses learn about, maybe local causes they want to write about?
Well, one of the biggest things that came from the research I did, which is very similar to other research that's been carried out before and since, it kind of reinforces the narrative of non-traditional leadership in organizations, moving away from that autocratic environment, because the things that come out on top in terms of what motivates employees, time and time again, of course, financial safety is up there.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's job security. So knowing that you've got continuation or longevity within your role. But the one that people continually seem to forget is recognition. Just a pat on the back.
Yeah.
Sometimes even more. And that's all I could do a lot of the time in the company that I was helping to run, because I couldn't give them any more money. I could give them bonuses if they earned them. But even when they didn't, I wanted to show, I couldn't say, right, you've not done nearly as much as you should have today, but good job, here's 20 quid. I couldn't do that, but I could say, look, we can take today as a learning curve. I'm really proud of how far you've come. And that would just keep them coming back, and they would get better and better. So yes, the pat on the back, it's the model that I live by, certainly.
Encouragement. It doesn't cost money, does it?
Absolutely nothing. Yeah.
Be a nice.
Yeah, smile.
And authentic as well, because I think you can go the other way of just saying it for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Because if there needs to be some correction or training or feedback, you got to be authentic in how you deliver that as a manager, as a leader. But yeah, if somebody's done a good job, tell them they've done a bloody good job.
Yeah. But isn't it beautiful that I feel like as human beings, we might not consider ourselves all particularly perceptive, but if you kind of good job someone, they know in themselves, whether or not they know. That's the beauty. We've got those BS filters, as some say,
Yeah, no, BS filter.
Yeah, it's nice, yeah.
Yeah, great. So tell me a little bit about now as a program manager, program director in the business school. What is it that really excites you now in your current role in the university and the sort of work you get to do with your students?
Well, I suppose it's no secret that education or the educational industry as a concept is in some respects struggling, because
that's very clear.
It is, isn't it? And you're working yourself with some universities, the partnerships you've got, you hear things, you see things, and me, myself, I'm living within it. And
do you think Brexit's made the biggest impact there?
It's a combination. I think Brexit, certainly, because I was running the department I was running during Brexit, and I saw the writing on the wall at that time. But ironically, the silver lining of COVID is what's had the biggest impact, because the advancement in digital technology, the explosion of AI, and the fact that everyone's now happy to sit at home in a meeting or sit at home and do a degree. So like 6-7 years ago, if you wanted to get a degree from home, straight away you think, well, open university, right? But now it's like, oh, no, every university. Because that's what every university, it's an arms race, just like it is with AI, who can provide the most product to the most remote individual at the best cost. It's the new business. So
I'll be honest, as a student during lockdown, I wasn't too happy. I was like, I'm paying $9,000 a year to join a Teams call, so. Yeah,
and I have heard people say that, but I wouldn't argue, but I think you might have only been 50% of the pool of students, because the rest of them, I know I taught through COVID, and they were like, all right.
We can't do an aerial filmmaking module online.
This is true, yeah.
To fly a drone, you need to actually get out there and do it.
This is very true, yeah. And I know some students that were trying to study things like medicine, and they were in the third year and they were supposed to be doing a lot of practical. They were trying to develop tools, which now have come a long way. But it hindered a lot of productive education.
Any of those courses, like myself included in filmmaking, any of the practical courses, we would have been on the other side and been, would have had a tough time because doing the practical work. I think that's one thing I loved about my degree is how practical it was.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my submissions of an essay, which I had a first in, was a YouTube vlog. Like, how cool is that? Like, that was my submission.
And you would have been doing that anyway, you'd argue.
And I still did it last minute. But,
100% extrovert.
100% extrovert, out enjoying too much with friends. But so I think, education, it's quite clear that, there are some challenges in that space. There is opportunity. But what do you see now? For those that are taking on the opportunity to be educated at university in Trinity and your students, what is really exciting you now about what students are working on or what they want maybe?
Well, it's how the university, particularly under its new management, is allowing levels of autonomy, growth and passion to shine through in the facilitators from an institute level. So say Swansea Business School, Institute of Management and Health is where that sits within the larger university. As facilitators, as program managers, we're being encouraged to look to our students or even to the wider world. What is it that makes these educational programs meaningful and, actually something that people are proud to come and do and will learn a great deal from? And it all lies in something that you mentioned a moment ago, which is practicality. So when I was running the department in that company, I'd have people with me, some of whom had undergrads, some of them were MBA holders, which was the same as me at that time. And I'm thinking, what are you doing alongside this job working for me? And they're like, no, this is it. I'm like, you've just spent like 4 years studying business, to the degree that I had recently studied. So I know business in and out. But it was, I know how to apply theoretical models and I understand the marketing mix or whatever, but how am I going to apply that? There was no practicality involved within their studies perhaps, or there was no way in which they could take what they learned and really apply it. So the way that the world is and should be going, and certainly the way that my programs and my colleagues' programs are going, it's let's see how far we can push this in terms of the practical side of things. Because yes, you can get an online degree, but the things that are missing is your ability to talk to people. So where I can, I've ensured that there are placement modules, or there is a lot more practical context. So like I said, if you've got a business idea, let's work on that business idea. So you effectively could, through your 3-year degree, you could really apply yourself to the thing that you want to go and do. And by the time you finish university, you could have a fully formed business plan for this thing that you want to go and do. So you're not learning about, case studies to do with 3M and Amazon or Apple and Google. Now apply it to this thing you want to do. We're actively encouraging them to think, incubate their idea from the earliest stages. And beyond that, then we are really leveraging the use of digital technology. So again, the university down on our SA1 campus in the IQ, we've got the immersive rooms and we've got this fantastical digital engagement and experience team. And we're developing a new curriculum. So I'm doing that with them for September, hopefully, in which we're going to have like a semester-long business game where students are going to be put in the hot seat and they're going to have an opportunity to make potentially really high-risk decisions in a completely risk-free environment. So really seeing what it's like out there. It's all about the practical side of things, because otherwise I don't think students should want to go and study unless there's something tangible they can take from it. And it's just so exciting, and we're being encouraged to collaborate between each other. And one of the things that really stuck out for me was at the beginning of this semester, I had a meeting with one of the program managers from Swansea College of Art within UWTSD. And we wanted to do sort of a Dragon's Den type thing. So he got all of his students that had created real prototypes of actual toys that could be sold in a science museum in the gift shop. But they didn't necessarily have any business leanings or too much by the way of business acumen taught to them during their studies, because it was all very hands-on and practical. Then on the other side, you had my students who, they knew certain theoretical business models inside and out, but hadn't necessarily had an opportunity to apply it practically because the changes we are making hadn't yet been established. So we put them together. We got a group of business students with a couple of creative students, and we put together this thing that we ended up calling the Piranha Pit. And these students...
You probably can't call it Dragon's Den. Copyright?
Yeah. Copyright, yeah. Yeah, come on, BBC. It's okay. But also because the one thing that they couldn't do, which Dragon's Den always do, it's like Duncan Banner, he's like, how many units have you sold over the past 2 years? Like, what's your turnover? They couldn't do that.
That's a good impression.
Again, when you don't spend a lot of time in your home country growing up, accents are something I don't struggle with. I came back from Holland with a Dutch accent, I'm told. So I was in a school in Town Hill in Swansea. I'm like, Mish, I don't know how to colour this singing. I know.
So the Piranha's Pit?
Yeah, so the Piranha Pit, they couldn't talk about units sold or turnover. So it moved us further away from that Dragon's Den type model. So yeah, and also copyright, we were conscious. But it was amazing to see the creative students looking to my students like, oh my gosh, this is a tangible product. All I need to know is a little bit more about maybe the value segmentation or the customer market or the logistics of how I would, upscale this. And then from my students' perspective, they were looking at the practical aspects and the joy that was being felt by these students, being able to get hands-on. And so I was speaking to Matt Archer, the program manager, and I was like, this has just really opened my eyes to the strength of practicality. And we've been working together ever since. And that started something. I wanted to put a little poster together to put on LinkedIn, like, hey, look, we're working together. And I wrote collaboration, and then I cut off the shun, and it was just collab, yeah? And I thought, collab's a bit lame. I'm like, what do they, X. That's like when one person, when you got, so it became CollabX. And then I had to make the poster look cool because I knew that I have the scrutiny of the art school. So I made this cool little poster. And then a couple of days later, someone came up to me and was like, could we do a CollabX? I'm like, a what now? And it became this thing. It became a thing. Out of complete, like me lying there with my daughter unable to fall asleep on me because she was ill. And I was like, I'm just designing something on Art Studio app on my phone. But this CollabX thing, but it speaks to power that, that's what everyone wants at the moment in the university and in the wider world. Everyone wants to kind of get and work together. And that's like when I saw you speaking at the For the Region, asking the question during the Startup Expo, and I saw what you were saying, and I thought, yeah, it's all about collaboration, and I just feel that you're capturing the stories of the people that are trying to do things in this, in this town.
Don't tell my wife the question I asked.
Okay.
Something along the lines of, what's it? Ian Morgan, wasn't it? Ian was presenting, and I could see Tonya Morgan from Morgan's Son. They were both, and West Acres. They were both in the audience, and I just asked the question. More so, part of me just wanted a funny response because they were both in the room. What's it like working with your wife?
How do you do it? No, but it was, and it was lovely. But the response was great as well. And he's like, oh, she's just walked in. But it was lovely. And that's what I'm seeing a lot more of, this corporate world that we are all part of now. But we're all like, actually, we're just people and we're trying to do something. And, and I messaged Ian after and I said, look, I just thought it was fantastic seeing this story of this homegrown person successful. And the same thing happened that's happened time and time again.
I got to get him on here, Ian.
Yeah.
Definite.
Well, he said, look, mate, if students ever want to chat, everyone's willing to share their story and you're captivating that in a very tangible way. And I just think, everyone's had a journey, and if it leads us all to this place where we're trying to get to the promised land together in some form, yeah, man, I'm all for that.
Anything exciting your students are working on in terms of business plans?
Well,
or have you signed NDAs?
No, there's one really exciting thing. So for the placement module, we've managed to get 4 of our students, rather than shipping them off to another company, they've stayed in the uni, and we've got them paid roles within it's like a wellbeing co-production. So they're now working with the wellbeing services team, and they're really focusing heavily on what can be done to really amplify the student voice and make sure that, because we talk about UWTSD, we are widening participation. That is our MO. We look for those non-traditional students and we show that anyone can have an opportunity. My qualifications were zip until I got given an opportunity, and it's helped me greatly. And so, yeah, they're really amplifying the student voice through their wellbeing co-productions, and really exciting stuff coming from them at the moment.
And thanks for sharing, Robyn. And just as we close, I'd love to know whose story would you love to hear? We've gone to hear a little bit about your personal story growing up as a musician, punk rocker, but somebody who's maybe inspired you, influenced you. That could be in the music world, that could be in academia. If you could spend half an hour sitting down in front of them, listening to their story, whose story would you love to hear?
See, I know, not to give the game away, but you did sort of hint to this coming, and still, there's so many different walks of life that I've been in, and I suppose, without sounding contrite, and I will, give reason to why, Nelson Mandela, and not just because of the amazing work that he did, and all the, the support he provided during the, the apartheid regime, try and speak truth to power, but the level of patience that this person can have being, unjustly incarcerated for like 27 years, I get annoyed if my Amazon parcel doesn't arrive in time. So how a guy can do that and just, ultimately, be voted in power to the country that he always wished to represent. It's just about the patience. I just feel that there's something there, some otherworldly, spiritual thing that I'd love to just try and speak about.
Incredible humility there, isn't it? That would be... that would be a story worth hearing for sure. Robyn, thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit about your personal story and the work you're doing now in the University of Wales, Trinity St David. I promise you, they have not paid us to say good things, because there's plenty of things I could say as a student that maybe didn't go so well when I was a student.
And this is exactly what we do want to know, though. I say we, they, but again, no, you're absolutely right.
Like they want the feedback, don't they? How they can improve things. I was very vocal with Brett and Dr. Matt Jones when Dr. Matt Jones when I was there. But actually, saying that, I've recently filmed a music video with my film lecturer, Dr. Matt Jones. So we've actually collaborated as a graduate and a lecturer, and we're now working on some films with Simon Wright from Wright Food Emporium.
Oh yeah.
Looking at Cake a Pobol, which is a community interest company they've set up. Simon Wright. So Matt is friends with Simon, so you've literally got a CollabX with student, graduate, and lecturer.
And if you need any jingles for your...
You want a jingle? Robyn is your man. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to know more about the School of Management, or maybe how you can support people, how can people best reach out to you?
So at the moment, LinkedIn has been a really fantastic tool for that. So I'm on there, Robyn Griffiths. I think I'm playing guitar in my profile picture for now. But I won't be changing it for a while. So reach out if there's anything to be discussed or any collaborations. I do a lot of pro bono work as well, doing free consultancy for charities if someone needs funding and things, because I believe that everyone should deserve an opportunity, and sometimes people do struggle if they've not had the experience. So anything, I'm always happy to chat.
Brilliant. And if you need a bassist or a jingle, he's your man. Robyn, thank you for coming on and sharing your story. Diolch.
Thank you, James. Diolch.